Hi, folks. Welcome to and I looked it up today, 75th podcast and videocast number 16. I got lots of things wrong yesterday. We're going to talk about Ian Murray, who most of you will see in the background. Ian is Scotland's only Labour MP and arguably represents a Tory constituency in Edinburgh. It isn't really, it's kind of half and half Tory Labour, but his stance on the union is, shall we say, dubious? Is that a good word for that? Anyway, Stewart, you'd like to lead on this, so go right ahead, my man. Stewart?
I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think you could have had a the background is pretty good behind you, but you could have had Ian Murray in his Union Jack suit.
It wouldn't fit.
All right. Anyway, that would have given us a good start. Look, the Duker, whose name I don't know is, but once a week he does a kind of satirical piece in the National. And he's come up with 7 different reasons to monster Ian Murray. And I thought we could start with them one at a time. So I'll read it one to start with. And here's what I'll try and shorthand, and you guys can have a go. Labour MP Ian Murray backs Lisa Nandy's approach to the issues in Catalonia. If you recall, it was about I'll leave it to you, Norrie.
Well, I was there during the referendum in Barcelona. And essentially, they call themselves the police, the Guardia Civil. What they are is a military arm of the police. Machine guns, side weapons, riot batons. They basically look like something that you would see in a movie out of a dystopian future. And these guys dragged people out, women, men, by the hair. They didn't mess with their batons. They basically assaulted the voters during the referendum in Barcelona. And Lisa Nandy thought, well, she didn't actually come out and say that if there's another referendum in Scotland, people should be beaten up. What she said was that it would be an idea to look at the way the Spanish government was dealing with the Catalonian question and apply the lessons that Spain had learned to the Scottish question.
Oh, you mean using violence against voters?
What?
Well, do remember, this is now our shadow foreign secretary, and what she suggested shows a remarkable lack of understanding of the constitutional differences between Spain and the UK. And as I say, she's now foreign secretary, or shadow foreign secretary, and Ian Murray to back that, given that he knows exactly, we all know that he knows exactly the constitutional position and the differences between Spain and the UK.
Realistically,
shows he's an ass.
Realistically, I would suggest that she was really pointing out the fact that the Spanish government just ripped powers back from the Catalonian regional government and then sent the police in. Mm-hmm. Now, the violence at the end is the modus operandi of the Guardia Civil.
That's how the Guardia Civil always operate. They're like the CRS in France. They didn't take prisoners and they do not ask questions. They just go in there with the boots flying.
Well, these guys live in barracks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're the army.
If you want to go right into it, it runs in families, being members of the Guardia Civil. And those families are specifically nationalist families going back to the Spanish Civil War. These are Franco's shock troops all the way.
Exactly. So it's interesting that Ian thinks that would be a solution.
I wonder where you'd find a Scottish version of the Guardia Civil, though, mate, because you just wouldn't find them in Scotland. Well, you would, but they're too fat. They smoke too much. They all stay in Lark Hall and they all wear sashes, so they wouldn't actually be able to do anything.
Lark Hall and Armadale. Maybe Armadale's not as bad as it used to be. But, I mean, this ties in as well with Sir Keir Starmer's stance, which is federalism like we've never seen before, apparently.
Only we've seen it every half hour.
Yawn. Yes, yawn, yawn, yawn. We've been there before. God almighty.
Okay, so is Ian Murray's support for Nandi makes him a fascist? Is that what we're saying?
It's
It
ready
certainly
to,
makes
he's
certainly makes
prepared
him
to
an
use,
asshole.
he's prepared to use violence against the division of the UK state. He's also a hypocrite because, to quote, a democracy that fails to be a democracy if the public are not allowed to change their mind. Now, the Unionists in Scotland are always going on about, oh, they can't change their mind about the 2014 referendum.
Jimmy.
We're only allowed to change our mind on things that suit Ian Murray. We can all change our mind on the EU vote, but we're not allowed to change our mind on anything else. Ian will be the sole arbiter of where we can change our mind and how we can do it.
So does that make Ian Murray, forgetting the Scottish point of angle, does that make him an anti-Brexiteer?
Yes.
Well, what he wanted was what they called at the time the popular vote. He wanted the British people to be able to vote on the final deal. That was his stance. So I would expect that the Scottish government, should we vote for independence, I would imagine his position will be that the Scottish people have to vote again on any deal that's made with Westminster.
Norrie, that backdrop's really disconcerting me. It looks like Ian Murray's trying to Roger you from behind there.
I really didn't want to tell you boys, but Ian and I have a very close relationship. That's not true, by
nice
the way.
retort.
I've never met the guy. I'm told he's a very good MP in his defence.
Well, he's the only one in Scotland. I'm sure he's well funded.
Well, according to Keir Starmer, the decision was very difficult choosing the Shadow Scottish Secretary because he had to decide between all his Scottish MPs. Now, I suppose what could have been meant by that is all the Scottish guys and women who have seats in England.
Aye, because there's a lot of them.
Well, right. We've got a Scot in as Shadow Chancellor at the moment, haven't we?
There's actually 2 or 3 Scots that have sitting English constituencies that are really decent MPs. They're really clever, they're smart, but unfortunately, they all toe the party line, and the party line is going to be federalism for the next few years. Well, in the hope that we're all too stupid to remember what federalism actually means.
Well, they just want to slow down any independence progress. I mean, the other thing is, every time this comes up, we're going to look at that chart from the Smith Commission and go, oh, you want federalism, so you've changed your mind on taxation, tick that box, whatever. I mean, they wanted the least amount of power devolved to the Scottish government during the Smith Commission.
Yeah, they were worse than the Tories in the Smith Commission, weren't they?
Yeah, well, the Tories were desperate for us to take charge of taxation.
Well, look, can I just point out that the Isle of Man has got more powers than Scotland has got?
Aye, but
well, the Isle of Man's not part of the United Kingdom, is it?
They've all got 3 legs in the Isle of Man.
It's officially, it's a crown dependency. Well, under those circumstances, Scotland would be better off as being a crown dependency, which would be a bit like the Free State in Ireland before it finally got its full independence.
And right, the Free State actually worked pretty well for the Irish in a lot of situations, not necessarily economically, but then England really gazumped and destroyed their economy the minute the Free State came into existence, didn't they?
Stuart.
We move on. We move on. If you recall, there are some people south of the border that regard the Scottish Parliament as just the equivalent of a parish council. That's not news. Yes. That's not news. You're right. So, Ian Murray, Labour's only Scottish MP took on the independence debate after criticising Norwich South MP Clive Lewis for telling the National about his views on a second independence referendum. Murray responded by arguing that he wouldn't get involved in a debate about the pedestrianisation of Norwich's High Street.
The interesting thing here for me is not his comparison of the Norwich High Street to Scotland, but the fact that he wouldn't get involved in that discussion. He's a unionist. Surely by definition, as an MP, that allows him to get involved in any discussion about any part of his precious union.
Yeah, I think it was more to do with the point that he didn't want somebody like Clive Lewis, who we could say has an intellectual capacity considerably larger than that of Mr. Murray. He really didn't want to get involved in the debate with him. He was trying to shut it down by being stupid.
But he's also, by saying that, Murray is actually proving himself to be the ultimate hypocrite.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
because basically he's criticising federalism.
Exactly. I mean, they do it all the time. Anybody that thinks an independence referendum is a good idea in Scotland, if the people want it, which is always the rider, if the people want it, who doesn't actually represent a Scottish seat or live in Scotland, is told to shut up. So if you're not allowed an opinion on Scotland unless you agree with the opinion of Scottish Unionists, what's unionism? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's no logic.
It is. It's the ultimate hypocrisy. It lives inside his head.
Very strange.
Well, very many things live inside Ian Murray's head, eh?
Well, apart from the fact he's a jambo.
Oh, no need to bring football into that, boys. The other thing that always gets me about this is this idea that they come out with quite often. I mean, certainly the independent side uses it more. This idea you don't understand Scotland unless you live here. But the Scottish Unionists quite often come out with it when there is somebody out with Scotland commenting on Scottish politics with whom they disagree. So it's very much picking and choosing the opinion that they want you to hear.
Yeah, they only want to hear opinions that agree with them.
Exactly.
And it absolutely boils their piss that the Scottish people are far more discerning than that and have chosen to relegate Labour to a position where, I mean, they're that bad. They're nearly as bad as the Lib Dems. That's how bad Scottish Labour have got.
The Lib Dems are, I mean, they should be called the Lib Fascists. I mean, they're
remarkably right.
Well, I mean, how dare you call yourself a Liberal Democrat and then refuse, in fact, a vote on anything? It doesn't matter what the subject is, what the referendum is.
Oh, they're remarkably right-wing, the Lib Democrats.
You know, unbelievable.
They were quite happy to support a Tory government in Westminster.
Stuart.
Let's one or two others, not too many. As all of us know, who know anything at all about politics in Scotland, the Labour Party is in coalition across Scotland in councils. Perhaps the biggest and most important coalition they're in with is Aberdeen.
With the Tories.
With the Tories, yes, with the Tories. At the last council elections, the SNP actually were the largest party, with the majority of councillors. However, the Labour Party and the Tory Party got together and formed a coalition just to stop the SNP running Aberdeen. Now, they've been running Aberdeen Council for donkey's years. There are 9 Labour Party Labour councillors in Aberdeen. They were suspended from the Labour Party. Just a technicality. They're quite happy to go in. They're just trying to hide their duplicity. However, Ian Murray's publicly said, oh no, he's demanded they get allowed back into the party as soon as.
His argument being that they continue to espouse Labour values while in coalition with the Tories.
Oh yes, how does that work? Can you just explain that to me, Norrie?
I have no idea, unless the Tories are bending over for them.
Oh yeah, bending over. Yes, yeah, that's okay.
That's the only way I can see it. Is no, I can't see it.
No, it's very much a Tory council. Very much a Tory council, Aberdeen, and it's indicative of Scottish Labour as a whole, where their only power base that they have left is actually at council level, and they now use COSLA as some kind of weapon against the Scottish government, to the point where it could get to the point where the Scottish government just disbands COSLA and starts up something different.
Well, they actually attempted a year ago, 18 months ago, to set up a rival to COSLA, which only consisted of Labour councils.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite frightening if you think that the largest party doesn't get to lead the council, be it in coalition with somebody else.
Well, come on.
It's
That's
a real
happening.
step into the dark times, and it's never talked about on the mainstream
Isn't
media.
that Ireland at the moment? Sinn Féin will be kept out of any power by the second and third.
Sinn Féin didn't have that. Sinn Féin didn't have the most number of seats in Ireland.
Are you sure?
No.
They have they're second in seats, but purely.
All right.
It was purely because they only stood something like 40 candidates rather than standing in every constituency.
All right.
But
fair enough.
They could get to the point where there's another election has to come about in Ireland, and if that is the case, then there's every chance that Sinn Féin will stand in every constituency, given the support they got last time.
Moving on, Stuart.
I'll just finish up with me and Murray was speaking on Good Morning Scotland, apparently yesterday. He said the shake-up in the Labour Party is an opportunity for a fresh start for Labour in Scotland. Sorry.
You're all right, mate.
Another fresh start for Labour in Scotland. Every time they have a fresh start, they go down.
Aye.
The last thing I've got to say on this, he added, a Labour way forward would be to look at a constitutional convention across the whole of the UK and resolve issues across Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and across the regions of England. We're back into that silly place.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be the regions that essentially all refused their own regional representation, 5 years ago?
Bearing in mind that during the referendum, the Brexit referendum, he also took the side of Gibraltar, so I assume he'll want to bring into this constitutional convention Gibraltar, Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man. And maybe the Cayman Islands while they're at it.
Falklands might want a word in there as well.
Oh, aye, Falkland Islands, aye.
I mean, the idea that he's a Democrat, I mean, everything you've mentioned flies in the face of popular democracy. So, as I say, it always amazes me that he is highly thought of as an MP. So he has his constituents into the office and he does all the right things. And yet he's so out on a limb here. And, and the Labour Party have just elected Jackie Baillie, who is pro nukes and anti-referendum. Somebody in the Labour Party has to trip getting out the bath, bang their head hard enough to realise they're on a hiding to nothing.
You have to
federalism.
You have to assume that every single decent brain has left the Labour Party, particularly in Scotland.
But even just from a pragmatic point of view, they're always going to lose votes to the Tories when it comes to unionism. I mean, diehard unionists are not going to vote Labour.
No, but they refuse
to vote Tory.
They refuse to accept that being unionist and being part of Better Together is the reason why they're in the doldrums. They find other reasons in their own wee heads. They come up with stuff to think, why have Scotland turned against us? They refuse to accept the reality that Scotland doesn't want to vote Labour because Labour doesn't represent Scotland. Their ideas don't represent what the Scottish people want.
I used to think that the Labour hierarchy in Scotland wanted to stay in the Union because of the power, the jobs they could get in a Labour cabinet at Westminster. They could be on the international stage and all that. But that can't be true anymore because there's only one Labour MP in Scotland. So, he's gone as far as he's gone as shadow Secretary for Scotland.
Well, look,
Yeah, they're used to catastrophe. They're used to their own party making catastrophic mistakes and falling apart, and they're waiting for the SNP to do that, and that just isn't happening. That's all they've got. They're waiting for that to happen.
Well, look, and not only are the Labour Party in Scotland blind to the mote in their own eye, it would appear that the new regime south of the border is just as blind. They still haven't come to terms with the fact that they sat on the fence over Brexit, and that's why they got kicked down the road. Oh, it was well. What was it? I'm not exactly sure what it was.
They didn't want to blame. They didn't want to blame Corbyn. They didn't want to blame themselves for their non-policy on Brexit. So it's purely doing to Rupert Murdoch. That's how they lost so many seats.
I would like to bring clarity to Corbyn's policy on Brexit. Because I'm going to have to lead whatever the decision is, this is Corbyn speaking, I have decided to sit on the fence and not commit to anything at all. I will now let the party rip each other apart, cut heads off, cut legs off. Oh, and I love the Jews. Please vote for me.
Aye. It was a message that really didn't resonate very well, did it?
Unbelievable.
Well, as I say, you've got the Labour Party in Scotland and the Labour Party in England, and they're absolutely blind to the mote in their own eye.
Well, I mean, I was actually quite surprised that Ian Murray got back in, and he got back in with a bigger majority. I have a feeling that every Labour postal vote got stamped with the wrong postal address.
Oh, you're not accusing somebody of some corruption, are you?
Well, is that particular area of Edinburgh the only place in the world where Labour Party members live? Have they all moved there?
Possibly. I didn't meet many of them these days talking about Leith, do you?
No, I was just thinking,
not too many.
Bear in mind that apparently down south, most of the successful Labour Party members are in London and are middle class. Now, you and I may disagree about this, Norrie, but Morningside is a very middle class area.
Well, we did chat about this yesterday, and I should have looked up, but it covers Oxgangs, the Inch, which are working class areas. I mean, there are some.
There are large areas in that constituency that are very much what you would call old Labour. But then old Labour tends to vote SNP in other parts of the country these days.
What do you think it would look like if Ruth Davidson stood there for Westminster?
She'd probably win.
Do you think?
Yeah, she'd get massive support from, well, she's already an MSP for certain parts of that constituency anyway, isn't she? So, but she'd get huge support in Morningside, Craig and Tinney, all these spots.
I reckon.
Craig and Tinney, sorry, Craig Lockhart.
I reckon Collington, and we could go on, Blackford Hills. I reckon the Labour Party would stand aside under those circumstances.
Come to an agreement.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you a unionist? Okay, look, we'll not put a candidate up.
Ian might even lend her his Union Jack suit.
Well, there you go. But they could fake an infight in the constituency party, so that they end up lodging their papers in time, and that would allow them. They could fake it.
Do you not think Ruth would just go around the doors in her uniform with her tank on a leash?
I was going to say, can you not borrow a tank?
Well, the danger of Ruth putting the uniform on and walking about Morningside, mate, is that people would mistake her for Gary Tank Commander.
Jimmy, you wanted to bring up, who is it? Britain in Union? Scotland in Union?
No, it was Leave.eu, who are kind of behind a campaign encouraging people to go out their doors tonight at 8 o'clock, as we've been doing on a Thursday night, to clap the NHS, or some people have anyway. And they want people to clap to encourage Boris Johnson to get well, because the Prime Minister's now in intensive care. Now, I've got a couple of issues with that. I'm didn't necessarily wish ill on Boris Johnson, but I struggled to come out and even say that, because I didn't like Tories and I didn't like Tory Prime Ministers. There's no danger I'd go out my door and clap him. In fact, I'd get the old catapult out and get these wee tins of beans you can get, the wee third of a tin, and just absolutely flatten anybody in my street that was clapping for Boris. Personally, 8 o'clock, if people are going to go out their door at 8 o'clock at night to do anything for Boris, I'd encourage them to go out and have one big collective fart. Fart for a FUD, that's the campaign tonight.
Eat a tin of beans and then come outside and fart.
Absolutely.
I've got this picture in my head of that sort of silhouetted lone piper, if you know what I mean, on the top of Carlton Hill in a Union Jack suit, one person standing clapping.
Getting taken out with a tin of beans to the back of the napper.
I also think it's very dangerous putting Boris Johnson's name in the same sentence as clap.
Oops.
Well, aye.
Oops.
I could also encourage, should anybody actually be thinking of doing that idea, do have a jobby in your hands first.
All right. Ooh. Well, look, I'm going to risk it by saying, have you not noticed how the current leftover government are running around in circles? They actually left it till Boris was probably in a coma, an induced coma in ICU, before they even admitted that Dominic Raab was going to take over. And they just remind, the performance of this government reminds me of the Soviet Union in that movie, In the Death of Stalin. They're all running around in circles, worried that he might die.
Well, it's just been tweeted that he's not got pneumonia, so he's not been ventilated. I'm not in the least bit surprised to hear that Michael Gove is heading for the hills.
Aye.
He's got a cousin 14 times removed that's got a cough, so he's self-isolating. So he's not getting the blame for anything.
I was desperately hoping it was his missus, because if there's one person I hate more than Michael Gove, it's his missus.
Ms. Vine.
Yes.
Yeah, she's... you reckon she pulls the strings there, do you not?
Oh, absolutely, mate. She's Lady Macbeth there. She's in up to the elbow at all times with Michael.
And I'm sure that she sits in Rupert Murdoch's pocket. She's his poodle.
I think there's room for her. It's no kind of fool with Rebecca Brooks.
there's quite a few skeletons in there that they can gnaw on the bones, so they'll come. I mean,
has she not become head honcho of something? Is she not chairman of the oversight committee for newspapers telling lies or something? Have I got that wrong?
No, Rebecca Brooks is now in one of the she's in something to do with Sky TV, mate. He moved her there to take her out the front line a wee bit, but she's still very much a creature of the Murdoch. I
think she's maybe moved to something else, because I remember thinking that is just unbelievable. I absolutely love that our free press is so confident in its own ability that it can run its own oversight committees, thereby making sure nobody ever does anything wrong.
Yeah, the worrying thing is our politicians are that easily bought off that they allow that situation to continue.
Did anybody spot anything else interesting today?
Well, I thought we could leave on an up note that at this time of crisis in the world, in Scotland, in the UK, in Europe, everywhere, we haven't got a government.
Sorry, that changed when?
Very good point there, Norrie. But we really do. I mean, I'm being serious here. We need. I'm sorry. I know Tony Blair was an arse, but we need a leader.
Well, I think the most interesting thing I saw today was the fact that the Spanish government, me back on a hobby horse here, boys. Sorry.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
The Spanish government is seriously discussing a universal basic income.
Oh, give us some.
And not even that. They're not talking about just a crisis universal basic income.
It's going to be permanent.
They're talking about introducing it permanently.
That's going to really shake Europe to its foundations if and when they put it in, because it's certainly, the article that I read, it's just about ready to go, and it could be put in very, very quickly. And if it works, oh my God, that would be a massive game changer throughout the European continent.
The euphemism they're using in the United States when they discuss this in government circles at the moment is the government becoming the employer of last resort.
Oh, that's a very good point, Norrie. What happened to Donald Trump's helicopter money? He was going to send out $1,000 checks to everybody, wasn't he?
I don't know if it happened.
No, I think that was quietly dropped. I'm not sure. I'll have to have a look into that this afternoon.
Well, as I say, keep your eyes peeled for that phrase.
Which one?
Employer of last resort.
You know how they talk about the Bank of England, being the lender of last resort? It's the same idea that essentially it means the government, whichever government, pays everybody a wage, regardless of what they do.
Yeah, see, the reason that the Yanks are using that phrase, though, mate, is so that they would have people go out and work for that. They wouldn't give people that who were just sitting in the house, whereas the universal basic income goes to everybody for no work whatsoever. Whatever you earn on top of that, whatever you work on top of that, is a top up at that point.
I'd be very surprised if any government that introduced this didn't ask for something in return. Voluntary, this, that, the next thing. But the idea of it, well, it'd be quite difficult to do that, actually, because the idea of it is everybody gets it.
Right. So how do you police a whole nation?
Well, if you're on 10,000 a month and you get a call, say it's 250 quid, because that keeps a week, that keeps it round figures. It simply means you would be taxed that £1,000 that the government have given you, plus your normal tax. So rich people, although they would get it in their account, they would pay it back in enhanced tax.
Aye.
But a lot of people, a lot of libertarians support the idea of a universal basic income.
There's a lot of merit in it. And as I say, the studies, the smaller studies that have been done, the likes of Finland, the pluses far outweighed the minuses, and the big minus points that people chunt their own about in the Telegraph and the Daily Mail were found to be they didn't happen at all, or if they did, it was tiny wee amounts of people taking advantage.
The biggest ever experiment with this, I think it was in Canada. They didn't keep the statistics. It ran between governments, so there was basically a Labour government. And before the experiment finished, they moved into a right-wing government. The right-wing government shut it down as quickly as they could and didn't publish the results.
I would tend to suggest that the results weren't very favourable to a right-wing government approach.
Exactly. I've actually got an interview, a panel interview, I think it was in Canada, that's very good, because they've got, I think it's 4 women on the panel, but right from the right wing right through to the left wing. And it's amazing how much agreement for different reasons there is with the idea. I believe this is the next big thing. Looking at the States, I think the States are going to start looking seriously at universal healthcare after this, and the government being the employer of last resort. I quite like that phrase, actually.
Yeah, but let's be honest, mate, that would create remarkable political division in America, given how that country's actually made up. You know, how much power is devolved to the states and how much state governors have influence. That would be a huge upset in America. Wouldn't be a civil war, but there would certainly be decades of ructions over it.
Well, the thing is, it's not socialism if you give it to everybody.
I know, mate, but come on, they couldn't even. Obama could. A president as well respected as Obama couldn't get a decent healthcare program through in his first term.
That's because they believe healthcare is rationed under that system.
No, that's because the vested interests have far more political power in America than they have in any other country in the world.
The other amazing thing about that whole argument was nobody seemed to be able to grasp that having universal healthcare didn't mean you didn't have private healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to stay private, you could stay private.
Come on, mate. That nation doesn't educate its people. Doesn't want them educated. True. So them not being able to grasp that, isn't it that surprising?
I'll try and find that discussion on UBI, and I'll send it to you chaps. Stuart,
do you have a look at what the Finns said, mate?
They had quite a big experiment with it, didn't they? That didn't go too well for them, did it?
No, it did. It went really well, mate. It's just finished.
Stuart, you're sitting there like you're dead.
Oh, universal basic income, a great idea. End of story.
I'm just glad you did speak to me because I didn't want to rush around to your flat with a big plastic bag.
You mean you've not already got the coffin in the back of the motor?
I wonder if there'll be a case for huge increases in coffin prices, because I've got one of these insurance policies that gets me buried.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hate to think that my wife would have to put her hand in her pocket and find another grand for a box to put me in. Maybe no bother with a box.
We'll get Ricardo to knock you one up to pallets, mate, if necessary.
Cool. Okay, guys. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norrie Stewart. And we'll no doubt catch you tomorrow with more unbelievable hilarity and seriousness. Cheers, folks.